My name is Andre Esters, and I'm here with Mr. and Mrs. Goss. First question I have for you all: what are some of your earliest memories of growing up?
Go ahead, Gary. You might want to tell them about your memories.
My earliest memories is family togetherness, being close in the family.
Okay. Being close in the family, talking about with you, your mom, your dad.
Yes, cousins, aunts, uncles. We did a lot of things together as a family unit.
What type of things did you all do together?
Um, we did picnics together. We canned together. Um, we did a lot of uh, holiday things together. We were always together doing things.
Okay.
And myself, some of my earliest memory is when I was about, actually, I can remember when I was 3 years old, but clearly I can remember being 4. I had two sisters that was younger than me because we all was close in age. And started school when I was about 5 years old and walked to school because our school was in the community, uh, not in the city at that time. Every little community had their own school. And so I walked to school for about 3/4 of a mile. And I remember that first day going to school that my mom took me out and put me on the side of the road where the school was located and told me to stay on that side till I got to the school. And when I come back home, to remain on that side. And when I get back, stand there next to the road and wait till she come out and get me and call her. And so I remember doing that. Now this was a long time ago when paved roads there wasn't many paved roads around. They was mostly gravel and dirt road, and this was a gravel road that I went. And I remember going to school barefooted. We didn't wear shoes at school, but the other kids when they got there, they also was barefooted. They're just some early memories that I have. Um, I remember my sister and I dealing with the second sister that we would have to look after her sometime while my mom was gone off to do some type of work. And, and she would tell us how to make sure we changed the baby. Um, at that time, they used things what you call like diapers, and we would have to take turns. I would have to pin one side with a safety pin, and my sister would have to do the other side to make sure that it was done properly, and we did it together. Now, that's just a memory there. There's lots of early memories that I have, but we'll stop there.
Yes, sir. So you were the oldest out of your siblings?
I'm the oldest out of 11. That's correct.
Oldest out of 11. What about you, Miss Goss? You were the oldest out of your siblings?
No, I'm the second oldest out of 4.
Okay. Well, what was your family like growing up?
My family was a very close knit family. We did a lot of things together. We were my cousins. We were brought up as brothers and sisters. So we enjoyed all the holidays, the gatherings. We were always together doing things. So it was really nice.
All right. Mr. Goss, what was your family like growing
My
up?
family was the same. We was very close. Like I said, I'm the oldest out of 11, so a lot of the role that I had to play was like a parent, helping raise the other children. But we had a lot of love. Our mom, one thing that she did was she instilled in us was to love one another, and a lot of that was based on Christianity because we went to church, and that's what Christianity was all about, was teaching that love for one another. And so we found just growing up and sharing what we had with each other and looking out for each other, not only one another, but also within the neighborhood and the communities.
Yes, sir. All right. Where did you all grow up?
I grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
All right. Mr. Goss?
I grew up right here in Louisville, Mississippi. Matter of fact, about a mile from where I am right now.
Okay, what was the community like down in up in Milwaukee?
It was a very nice and friendly community. Everybody knew each other. Everybody watched out for one another. If you needed something, it was there. The stores were very close. We didn't have to. We didn't want for anything because the community. We all came together and helped each other.
Okay, came together as a family to help each other in the community.
The neighbors, yes.
Okay, Mr. Goss, what was the community like growing up here in Winston County?
It was, in fact, it was much like what Sylvia is saying here. We got along with each other. If something happened in the community, then everyone knew it. Mm-hmm. If there was sickness, then everybody would come together. If there was death, actually, the church, one of the churches that was in the community, that had a bell outside of it, mm-hmm. and if somebody died, they would go and ring that bell, and everybody in the community would know that something was wrong. If someone was sick, and then they would come together and find out and go to the house where that person works and show their respect and get together in prayers and concern. So the community was good, and then if there was something that was needed, you could always go to someone in the community and get it from them, and then if they didn't have, they could come to you if you had it, and you would share. So it was a sharing community.
Okay, all right. Ms. Goss, you say you grew up in Winston County, but now you're here you grew up in Milwaukee, but now you're here in Winston County. What made you move and come down here?
Well, this is where my mom, this is where my roots are. My grandmother and grandfather, and I was born here, but I was raised in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Okay. We moved to Milwaukee, Wisconsin when I was about 5. So I always wanted to come back home, so I came back home.
There's no place like home.
That's right.
Okay. What are your earliest memories of food?
My earliest memories of food is sitting around a table. I really love breakfast. My earliest memory is breakfast foods like smothered chicken with tomato gravy, biscuits, grits. My mom, she was kind of like a chef, so a foodie. So we had all different kinds of foods. That's how we were interactive with each other, was with food. And my earliest memory is the breakfast foods. I love breakfast.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Goss, what are your earliest memories of food?
You're making me smile when you say that. My memory of food, earliest memory was wildlife. My dad was a hunter, and then I understand I grew up in the 50s and 60s. Mm-hmm. I'm born in the 50s and 60s, and then 70s is when I eventually graduated from high school. But as growing up as that young kid, my dad would go out and the food would be rabbits and squirrels. And there would be hogs that people would raise, and they would have hog killings, and they would get the bacon and the sausages and all this from them. And so this is the type of food. And then there was the food that we grew, and that's going to cover the vegetables, peas and butter beans and green beans and turnip greens and collard greens, tomatoes and squash and cucumber, peanuts, potatoes, all this type of stuff is what we grew up on, and that's what the food were that we had. And then eventually, they would go to the store. We didn't, as kids, we didn't go much, but they would go and they would come back with some goodies that we call it, because there's some things that we didn't have around the house. They may come back with ice cream every now and then, or cookies or something, which was rare, and that was something that was exciting, to us as in those days.
Okay.
So there's a lot of memories about food.
Okay. You said you all grew your own food. So did you have your own land?
No, we didn't have land. When I was growing up, we lived on someone else's property. Maybe that was a house and maybe an acre or so. Maybe the whole thing was an acre. Might have a little garden spot, and that was about it. But we didn't own any land. Our grandparents, they had a piece of land that they leased themselves, and sometimes we got vegetables from their property, that leased property.
Okay. Ms. Goss, did you all have your own land?
No, my grandparents had their own land, but we didn't when I was growing up. But as I got older, we did.
Okay. And now that you all are married and together, do you have your own land now?
Yes.
Invested in that. Yes.
Yes.
How much land do you all own at the moment?
About 40 acres of land that we own. And
Do you all grow your own food? You still grow your own food now?
Yes.
Okay. What type of foods do y'all grow now together?
We do peas, pinto beans, corn, string beans, tomatoes, squash, butter beans, all kind of different greens, and we do herbs. So we grow a variety of foods.
and just to add on to that, we have like blueberries, figs, blackberries, pears, what's the other fruit trees there? Black walnut and pecans. Yeah, have those also.
Okay.
We even has a tree that's a mulberry tree that we can't get any mulberries off it because the birds always get them, but we do have them.
Okay. And this so it's better growing your own food. You feel that it's better growing your own food instead of going to the stores or something.
Yes. The preservatives and different things that is added to the foods in the stores in order to preserve it, it actually goes in your body and it stays there because it's a preservative. So if you grow your own foods, it's healthier, you'll feel better, and you also know what you're putting in your body. You are what you put in your body. So growing your own foods is also an enjoyment, and it's also, it will help you in the health area. You'll feel better. It's also good for exercise. So it's a lot of benefits in growing your own food. You get your nutrition that you need out of your foods when you grow it yourself because you're in control of what is going in your foods. What kind of, if you want to use pesticides or anything like that, it's up to you. We like to do it natural.
Okay. I like to do it natural. I like that. Did any of you or any of your family members grow up or work on the farm, dealing with animals, have your own animals, or the family had their own animals?
I grew up working, but as far as having our own animals, we didn't have our own animals. In the time that I grew up again, we grew up what we call, I guess it would be like sharecroppers, and the peoples that land we lived on, they had a dairy farm, and they had cows, and those cows had to be milked, and so sure we would milk the cows, and also we would make sure that the calves and everything are born, and just kind of take care of whatever we was required to do to make sure that, because in the time that I'm speaking about, they had milk trucks that would come around. You would put the milk out by the road in cans, and the trucks would come around and pick the milk up. And we had to make sure that it was clean and not have like bitter weeds, because that would change the whole taste and spoil all the milk. So that was one thing we did. And then, like I mentioned my granddad earlier, now he would raise hogs, pigs, and no, that was for food. And they would have chickens, and also they would have maybe a cow too. where they would get their milk for the house, but also maybe a beef that they would take to the slaughterhouse and get some steaks and hamburger meat. And then also there was, besides raising that, sometimes there was wildlife, again, goes back to that, where you may kill a deer and get the tenderloins, the steaks from there. So that was a lot of different things, but and fishing is one of the main things. We did a lot of fishing because, you know, it was easy to go out and catch fish. But as far as raising things, that was, I think my granddad had I remember him having some ducks and turkeys, and they was mainly for eating. And when it comes that time, we would take them and we would have a chicken killing at a certain time of the year to get ready for the winter to put the food up. And we store it into, it's amazing, you know, this stuff is gone from this world, and maybe in the third world, they have like they call a smokehouse, and you would hang the meat up in there, the hog, and then you would smoke it. And when you got ready for some in the winter, you'd go out there and cut some off of there. They also had what they call dries. They would put it under some pine straw or down in the ground, and you could kind of keep things cool like that and keep it supposedly fresh. But it seemed to work pretty good. They seemed to live a long time, but you know, we wouldn't dare do that these days.
Yes, sir. And back to growing your food, you both said that your communities always was together, so it wasn't really a problem with everybody sharing food back in the community.
No.
And that's the way it was here. We didn't have much problem sharing. Our neighbors, like I said earlier, they needed something. And then if someone was like some syrups, you know, they would make syrups, and how they would make it was they would take a fire in the cane, and then they would just have they had a mule to pull around in a circle. And I was just a kid, and I would have to go and put wood on the fire. But when I finished that day, they give me like a little 2-gallon bucket to take home with me for our family.
Okay. What are some of your proudest moments in life?
One of my proudest moments in life was when I went back to school and I received an associate's degree. I became a chef. I put it like that. Yeah, that was one of my exciting moments. I put it like that.
Okay, becoming a chef, did you carry out that dream of becoming a chef?
I did, yes, and also we were blessed to have our own restaurant for 5 years. Yes, it was called the Red Onion, and it was on the health. We did a lot of healthy things, a lot of creative things at the restaurant. It was really different. It was on like a New Orleans. It had a New Orleans twist. With different little things that we did. We created our own recipes, and people came from, I believe, England, all over to the restaurant. So I did. The Lord, He blessed us to walk in that dream, and it was nice.
And what was this restaurant located? Was it located here?
Yes, it was.
Could you talk maybe about a couple of the recipes that you're really proud of, that you're the happiest about, some of the ones that work?
We did. One was called the Son-in-Law, and also we did gumbo. We did the Winston Pride Burger. We did, we did so many different things. We did the steak and greens.
Shrimp and grits.
Yeah, we did the shrimp and grits. We had because the menu was constantly changing. So we did so many different things that it's hard to give you everything that was really done at the restaurant. But it was very creative and it was good. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
We used a lot of different herbs, and we created our own seasonings and sauces and different things like that. So that's what a uniqueness of the restaurant came in, and the restaurant was made on a romantic style for couples. Inside the restaurant, it had drawings like in New Orleans, and it had a pond in the front. It had a patio in the front where you can sit out. It was a house that was converted into a restaurant. It had atmosphere, had the low lights, the soft music. So the atmosphere was for couples to be able to become closer. It was a romantic place. It was like a getaway.
Oh, that sounds amazing. I was getting hungry listening to some of the dishes that you served too. And did some of those come from, family recipes or traditions or things that you
No.
learned, or
It was things that I learned from the different places that I've been blessed to go. And so you take what you learn and you put it with your imagination. And that's when you can begin to start creating things. And, that's how a lot of the dishes was created. You have to do research, and you can't be afraid, I'll say, step into the water. You have to be able to have a creative mind to come up with different things that people, they may like it and they may not. It's a change. You take chances in that field.
Okay.
So
Well, what type of places were you blessed to be able to go to learn these type of dishes and food?
well, the places that I went to was, Minnesota. It was so many different places. Even with my husband, we went to different places. Name some of the places.
We went down to New Orleans.
Yeah,
before.
we
We're
went
in
all
Wisconsin.
over.
Just because a lot of times we would drive back and forth to Wisconsin after we was together, so you would stop in a lot of different towns by driving, and then you would run across some things. And also at the restaurant that she talked about, it was tall ceilings. The building that she also talked about was built in 1898, so it was historical, and so it was, plus it was it wasn't in the city, it was in the country, so it's got a great setting. Finishing up with that, just going to the next step is on a proud moment myself, since that's what the question was. One of my proudest moments was to graduate from high school, because I was the first one in our family to graduate. I could say, well, being the oldest, you should be the first one. But no, my parents, my mom and my dad, neither one did, and that was a big step. And another one was when I got in high school, I was very small, but I decided to go out and run track. And we had a school that was, we had several, 1,000 students there in our school. And matter of fact, the year we graduated, we had about 263 in our class. But I ended up being the only boy on the track team that went to state, and I thought that was amazing. And believe it or not, I was running the mile. to go to state, run the mile in those days was amazing. And so that was a proud moment. And then there's many other proud moments that throughout our life, but that's just one. But another one is that there was a calling that was on my life, that the Lord, I could feel it, that He wanted me to go into ministry. And so my wife and I, we left the restaurant and we went into ministry. And so that's how we ended up into ministry. And then once we got into ministry, we decided to even go further with some more proud moments. We went to seminary school and got our bachelor's degrees, and then we went back and got our master, and then we went and got our doctorate. So those are proud moments that we have done. And since that time, we pastoring church and being leaders and teaching people about God and about Christianity, kind of like what we picked up when we was young ourselves.
Okay.
That's proud.
Yes, sir.
And then we're proud of our children and our grandchildren. That's another. Really proud of
Yes.
them.
All right. Do you all have any? What are any biggest changes? What are the biggest changes that you've seen in your life?
When I moved here, it was a big change. And I met my husband when I came here. That was a big change because it happened so fast. And I thank God for the change and for the things that happened.
Yep, and that was a big change in my life also, because at that time I was a widower, and so I happened to go to church, and Sylvia showed up at church that Sunday. Her sister went to church because she lived here, and we went to church together, and she showed up at church, and we met there. And the rest is history. Is all them years are going by, but that just was a blessing that that happened, and we just thank God for that. And we eventually, bought this place out here and started farming. We raised cows since we've been grown, and horses. We've had them, and we just had a variety of animals around, and just did lots of things. Fish ponds. It's totally different from when growing up. Things changed. We went from doing for others to doing for ourselves, and it was a big change in life to be able to have something that you can call your own.
Right.
In between, from the time I'm 5 and I'm 66 now, there's a lot of information that would take books to fill that we have achieved. But we're just giving you just a little niche.
Yes, sir. Well, I don't have any more questions, Mr. Bryant.
I have a bunch, but it's just which ones to follow.
Okay.
You were talking about, and if y'all have time, I know.
We have time.
You were talking about hunting and fishing and everything, and I was wondering if you could talk a bit more about like where you went, what places you found to like go hunting and fishing, and a bit what that was like.
Yeah. After I was grown, as a child, we went to different people's places. Even where you lived, even if you lived on someone else's land, you was allowed to go and hunt on that property, because all you hunted was for what you was going to eat. And like I said, squirrels and rabbits was a big eating thing. A lot of people don't probably eat them, but there's coons, they got ate also. Even beavers, you could trap beavers and things. Some people say, you ate beavers? Of course you did. That helped you to survive in the time that we was growing up. And then afterward, there was places like the Knoxville Refuge, which up there, people could go in there as long as you had your license and permit to go hunt. So that was always fine. And then there was hunt clubs. After I got old, in my 20s and 30s, I got in hunt clubs. And one of the places I would hunt is over at the Knoxville River, a place called Circa M Ranch back then. It was Knoxville River ran right down through there and had a lot of deer. Loved to go deer hunting. Went early in the morning and stayed all day and come back home at night. So you was put overtime in hunting. So that was, and fishing, you would go to different lakes like Choctaw Lake up there, Bluff Lake. You would also go to places like Kemper Lake and down the marina or Tippecanoe. It's just a lot of different places. There might have been a creek that come across, or ponds. So someone may have a private lake. So there was always places you could go and fish and hunt.
So you were talking about the community that you grew up in, which wasn't exactly Louisville. What was the name of the community?
Oh, the community I grew up in is right here in Louisville. This place here is called Center Ridge.
Center Ridge.
Yeah, this is 5 miles from Louisville. I grew up in this community right here. That's Lake Tilcata over there. We go fishing over there. So there's places that you always could find. Yeah, I'm from Mississippi,
Mm-hmm.
you know, but my wife is from Wisconsin. That's where the difference is. That's why she said when she moved back down here, and we happened to meet. You know, and that was over 20 years ago now.
It'll be
that we
21 in August.
Yeah. But you know, in the earlier part, I was married another 21 years, but I lost her to breast cancer. And so eventually I found someone else. God sent me someone from Wisconsin, but I always say.
Could you talk a tiny bit more about the history of Center Ridge, like the longer history of Center Ridge?
Yes, here in Center Ridge, like I said, I was born here in Center Ridge. Well, it wasn't right in the community. No, they took me uptown to the doctor's office. I was born in a doctor's office. And also in Center Ridge, we had what you call a midwife. So, and this was in the 60s now, I'm telling you. Those midwives were still working, and they would help your mom to have the child, and then they would take the date and everything and get it to the record department where they're supposed to go for the birth certificate to get turned in. But Center Ridge, as a community, Center Ridge sits on approximately a section of land, which is about 640 acres. And this land is mainly 16th section land. That's where it's leased land. It belongs to the state, of course. And so what the state does is lease it out to people's, once a year, I said, 640 acres. They lease that once a year. They have to pay a lease. Now, but we don't live on 16th section land. We own our land. We live in 20th section, so that's different right there. In a different township and all also. But in the community, we had our own school. We had 2 or 3 churches that was in the community. You know, Baptist, Pentecostal, Methodist, those churches was around. As far as jobs, it would be mainly farming because most people went and worked in factories in a plant that was here in Louisville. And the other thing, there was a little store here. And the little store was where you could go and get your little food. There was a lady and her daughter that lived in the community that they had this little store. You need a little something, you could go there and get that. And then years later, another guy that had played professional football, he came and built a store and put some gas tanks up. And so that worked out for a number of years before that moved on. But as far as the community itself, most of it was close-knit with relatives living around. Everybody knew who somebody were. And if you didn't know that person, if that person was not kin to you, well, chances are you probably end up marrying that person's daughter or son, you know, so that way you just keep the community growing. And then once people start traveling a little bit better on cars, because cars got a little better, because when I grew up, there was a few cars. Every now and then you hear one come by. Matter of fact, they were still driving mules and wagons. And some of the wagons had rubber tires and some had iron tires, and they would drive from Center Ridge to Louisville up there and shop on Saturday. The adults would. The children hardly ever went. It was a treat for a child to go to town. And it was fascinating when you went there. If you went there because, you know, this is something that he was almost like he was wild because you was just running from place to place, just so happy. Mama had to have you by your hand to keep you from getting away. And so that's about how it was just growing up in the community. If you ran out of something, you know, there was food that they called, the government would help assistant, and what they would do, it would all depend on how many people you had in your family, and they would give you amount of this, amount of that for each child that you had. If you had 11 children, say it was something like beef stew, everybody got a can of beef stew, you know. And you ate good one part of the month, because next month they would do it again. It took a month, but you know, if you got 8 to 10 children, you was going to eat that food up pretty fast. That's why you have to have the gardens and things. And so if you run out, you may have to go to the neighbor and ask for something, and the neighbor would loan it to you if they had it, and then when you got it back, you would pay it back. And then as far as grocery that you need from the store, there would be some store that would give you a trade, and you would go there, and what they would do would give you so much, and you take it in the next month. When the like my mom, because when I was 13, my dad was gone. He was there no more. And my mom, and what she would do, they gave like welfare, and what they would do was take that check, and out of that check would have to be your water bill have to be paid, your electric bill have to be paid, and then your grocery bill that you owe. And so when you finish that there, back then they didn't give not even $100. That was gone, and so you're ready for the next month to try to get in and survive. And so therefore you found yourself doing things like the children, they would go out and they would chop cotton, pull corn, pick cotton when that time came. Your mom was right there next to you, your siblings, because you was trying to make a few dollars in order to survive. Mm. It was hard time. That's why you should never forget where you come from, right. And always just count it a blessing to where you get to, and never look down on anyone because you don't know their story. Right. And just always try to lift them up and try to find yourself being a good leader. And in order to be a good leader, you must be a good listener, and you must be a good follower. The best leader will become the best follower. But that's what Center Edge was like. You could go to someone and say, hey, I put it like this right here, Andre. Those text messages that we use now. Yes. Back then, we already had them. Your mom would write a note and tell you to carry it to the neighbor. And then you go to the neighbor, and then they write a note and bring it back, and they tell you, do not unfold it. They didn't have an envelope to put there, so you wouldn't even unfold it. You bring it back and give it to them. And that was amazing, when you think about so many things that happened with your siblings. They always was there to help support you, because what you learned, you had to pass it on down to them, and then they just pass it on to the next. So it was totally different than it is today. Today, as you can see, things are much better. Technology has come in, and with the new technology that we have, we can grab this phone here and get you an education right now. Yeah. And go anywhere in the world, and be able to find anything out about anything. Back then, news was slow. News came about somebody died. If it wasn't right here in this community, but 15 miles away, it may be a week or two before you found out about it. And I had an auntie, she thought that she lived a long ways from here, and it was nowhere but Ackerman. When she was going out of town on vacation, she went to Ackerman. Thought she was really gone somewhere. Where are you from? I don't live here. Where you live? Ackerman. Okay. And at that time, we didn't know where Ackerman were. Mm-hmm. But I ran that for now. So that's what it was like, Brian, just growing up at that particular time. Unless there's some other specific question that you want to know about.
That was like so much illuminating information. And you mentioned that you moved to Milwaukee when you were 5 years old. Mm-hmm. Where in Mississippi did your family come from?
Jones Street. We lived with my grandmother. It was my uncles. It was Louisville. So it's uptown.
Oh, I figured it was Louisville once you said Jones.
It's uptown. Yes. When you live in the town part, it's different from the country. Mm. We had a car. Everybody in the household, when I came along, I was born in my grandmother's house in the dining room with a midwife. So everybody was grown in the house where I came from. So therefore, we had it better because everybody brought their monies, and we were able to get a bathroom built onto the home when I was born. We were able to have go to the grocery store and get what we needed. So we were blessed in a lot of ways when I came along. But before I came, it was probably like my husband was saying. But I had a different view of life than my husband did because of the circumstances that was there when I came. Everybody was working in the household, so therefore it was better when I came. They struggled before I came, but because everybody got a job and started working and bringing their monies in, that's how it was. Everybody lived in the same household. The brothers, the sisters, you may be married, but you still lived in the same household. That's how a lot of people made it. They just put their monies together, and then when they were able to save enough, they were able to go out on their own and get their own things. So that's how I was raised. It's like that uptown.
So people sort of pooled their money as well, and sort of when there was a necessity,
Yes.
do it together with the income that they were getting from different jobs.
Yes.
What were the places that people in your family worked?
My grandfather, he worked for the railroad. My uncle, he worked for the railroad. And I believe two of them, I think they worked at Taylor's or something like that. Yeah, I was real small, so it's kind of, because I left when I was about 5, so that's what I remember. And I could be wrong, but I know my grandfather, he worked for the railroad. And one of my uncles, the oldest son, he worked for the railroad.
And Taylor's is a department store? Or?
No, it was
Taylor Machine Work.
Oh, Taylor Machine Works.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And that was about the time they was getting started too, wasn't it? About the 60s.
When you moved up to Milwaukee, were most of the people in your neighborhood from Mississippi or from the South?
That's what Milwaukee is. It's just a southern town. A lot of people from the South move to Milwaukee and to Wisconsin. It's just a little southern town. Yeah, so a lot of the traditions and ethics and things like that, it was there because we brought it from the South. And that's why I believe the communities there were so knitted together. Is because it was brought from the South. It was real friendly. If you needed something, even in Milwaukee, we had community gardens. You could grow your own food. And then you go to the park. And my mom, she would take us to the park and we would gather apples, crab apples, pears, peaches. It would be all kind of different things in the park that you could get, and you take it home and you can it. And we would work our garden. That my mom, she would go out, like I said, it was a community garden. You would buy a plot, and then you could plant whatever you want, and we worked the ground and harvest the food we can. We processed, we gave it away. We shared what we had. It was full. We never wanted for food. My mom, like I said, my mom was like a foodie, and she was very creative in survival. She knew how to survive.
And did you ever come back to Mississippi for vacations to see family?
Yes, it was. We would come every summer. Myself, my sister, and my cousin. He was a young man. It was myself and my sister and my cousin. He was a young man. We would come and we would visit my grandparents every year until I was 13. And we would help my grandmother. She played a great role in my life. We would help her. She was always canning and doing different things. She taught us a lot of things. So she had hands-on in our life. Even though we were in Milwaukee, we would come back for the summer, and she would teach us different things. We stay about 3 months every year.
Wow. I remember staying with my grandparents a bit of time over the summer, but it had a very different connotation, because it was a different part of, Mississippi or Alabama rather than from Milwaukee to
We had a lot of
Mississippi.
fun. We, my mother, she would take us fishing. And at that time, plums and different things would grow along the side of the road. You would go out and you would gather those things, and you could can them, or just nobody went hungry because you could go and pick things on the side of the road, different kind of fruits on the side of the road. So she taught us survival skills also.
Wow, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now they cut down and spray the side of the road.
Yeah.
You can't eat that.
They'll
Kills
kill you.
it.
So did y'all sort of pay attention to, or were you aware of the civil rights movement in the 1960s as it was going on?
I was.
Sure.
And-
Yeah, in the 60s, I can remember the civil rights movement. I can remember my grandparents and my mom talking about it, about they was going to be marching. I believe it was Selma, Alabama. I can remember that. I remember when President Kennedy, John Kennedy, was assassinated in Texas. I remember how sad it were in the community. And the community came together like a member in the community had died. They came together at different homes, and they was so sad. And they said, you know, we don't know what's going to happen now because we lost someone that was really seemed to be trying to help us. No, I can remember them saying that as as black people, they were saying that about President Kennedy. And then I remember the struggle that was going on after Johnson got in there. And I remember Dr. King, how much talk always about, well, there's someone that seemed to be going to help us out, Dr. King. And it was positive talk, some was negative because they didn't really know what was going to happen. But I can just remember some of the conversation that they was having as we children was coming by. And then eventually, I remember the sad day that he was also killed. And I remember how, again, the community came together and they said, well, they have killed him. And not only him, but also President Kennedy's brother that was killed. I remember that. And I remember that there was some people working with the NAACP, trying to make changes. And I also remember some of them come up missing. So, that's, and then, it seemed like they say, well, they missing them. They don't know what happened. We think that somebody has killed them. I can remember that as a child, and that was a moment of fear, but somebody else would always step up to the plate, and they would say, well, we got to do this because there need to be changes. And so it continued to just go on. Now, this was a child, and I don't remember now, and how children, how we would sit around, our parents would, talk to us about it. But y'all remember that God made all of us, and that there's some good in everybody, and that no matter what you do, you show love to others and respect them, because nobody is better than you, and you're better than nobody. Those are the words that I can remember coming out of my mom's mouth and my granddad. So that's a few things that I can remember about the civil rights movement during the 60s. And before my wife take it, I can also remember that they would come out and start wearing things like dashikis and the different colors. It was like afros and all that. And that's kind of what they was wearing, because the change was coming. And so when change come, then so your appearance also begin to change. Okay.
What I remember, I was shielded from a lot of things. In the community that I was in, everybody got along. It really wasn't a black and white thing. In the 60s, you would hear talk, and I remember when Martin Luther King, when he was killed and the riots, I seen that, the riots and how you couldn't go outside because of the anger that was there. But like I say, the community that I was in, I really was not exposed to a lot of black and white issues until I was in my 20s. because every the atmosphere that I was around, like I said, I was a shield from a lot of that. Everybody got along, and if it was an issue, it wasn't shown. Everybody worked together. I had friends of many colors, and it was not an issue until, like I say, I started working in the workforce. That's when you really see it. Yeah, but other than that, I didn't have any issues with people like that.
And even here growing up, Brian, there was people that was really nice to you, no matter what color they were. A lot of them was right there. If you need them, they step up and help. Now, there's some things that you hear about, and that's what anybody. There's always going to be some bad people in every place, and that's some things you heard about that was terrible. But you could hear about it whether it was in, a mixed community, or just a Caucasian community, in a black community. That's some bad things. But as far as people's getting along, when I was growing up, we always had it pretty good. Our school integrated when I was in the 10th grade. That was really a change. Talking about one of the places, Andre, when you're talking about some change coming in your life, because you don't know what to expect, but everybody that was there in the school was the same way. Everybody was looking at everybody funny, no matter who you were, what color. And you know what? As time went on, you end up being friends. You end up being on a team. A lot of that were. You're always going to have some that's not going to cooperate, but the majority was fine. And once you go into the job, it's the same way. A lot of changes came along at the time that I got old enough to get a job. And so the job I own, I mostly worked with Caucasians. Matter of fact, I was the only person there for a long time, and then maybe another guy came, another man of color. And so, but we ended up being family. I've been retired since I was 53 years old. That was back in 2008. And most of the people that I work with, they're my friends today. I can call them up right now, and they are not all black peoples. They are some Caucasians, and some of them that I was with every day for years, out of the 34 years I worked, was Caucasian. So what do you end up with? You end up with an associate that becomes more like a brother to you. Because, when he's looking to see me, because he got something to talk about, and I'm looking to see him. And so, now, everybody's not like that, but I'm just talking about, since you all talking to us, I'm talking about where I did and where I came from. And I came from the old place where your toilet was outside, and your bathroom was a tub, what they call a wash pan, or a foot tub. That's what your bath was taken in. We got our water out of a well or out of a spring. We went down to the spring and fought the tadpoles back to get the water out of there, and bring it home. And sometimes we had to boil it to be able to drink it. And so that you come from a place like that, and then you get to where you are today, it's just different. And when you try to explain this to young people your age, they cannot imagine it. It would be like somebody try to come in and explain to me something that happened in the year Columbus supposedly discovered America. I wouldn't have no idea what they're talking about if they start trying to tell me about the way life works. But you don't want to forget that. And so what you all have done, I think, is really great to have the history of it, because one day we are out of here, and it's going to help someone to see what the peoples go through. Documentary is really great. But I think that's mainly what you was asking about.
Andre, I've seen you writing as they've been talking. So
Yes, sir.
You might have some additional questions, it looks like. Or?
Not really no question. I just was writing down details and just taking in what's being said.
You see the nice haircut that Andre had? Well, when we was growing up, haircut cost like a quarter, and we go get a haircut, and our haircuts was rare because we didn't have a quarter to pay for it. And then how do you go and get a haircut on credit? You go to the barber and say, Mother said, can you cut her hair and she'll pay you later. And that's about 3 or 4 of us boys up in there, a hair growing every which way. And a lot of times the barber took the advantage of us. And it's comical. They even have like a bowl, that you put fruit in. And he take that bowl and he set on your head and then he cut around it. then he take everything off the side and just kind of left the top. And he had these old clippers that would like pinch you, and then he'd be like, "Do that hurt?" And like, "Why do you think I'm jumping?" So all that kind of stuff was going on. That's just, but you all probably never seen any clippers that use with their hands like that, but that type thing. And then you get a toothache, or you weren't going to the dentist because that cost money, and you didn't have money. And so what they ended up doing was they would take a piece of thread and get between your teeth, and they would put it in there, and then they would yank it out. Yeah. But you was glad to get the pain out because a lot of times that helped. Our granddaddy used to take it, and and he was a really comical man himself. He taught us so much as far as growing vegetables. He would when he had a limp, and he would take a chair out in the garden, and he would pick food in his chair and teach you how to do it. But when he could walk, he would plow behind a mule. The mule would, like a tractor today, with a plow and disc behind it. Well, he would use a mule with a plow behind it and plow the ground up, and plant vegetables and raise food for his family. Now, I know I went back, just thought I'd throw that in since you're still there.
Thank you. Andre, you have any final questions? If not, I'm sure you would have a bunch if you wanted to spend all day. But
not really. What was your first car?
It sounds like one of them surveys now. The first car I had, my car, was a '68 Oldsmobile. I got that car in 1973. I bought that car from a guy that sold used cars. Delta 88 is what it was. I don't know whether they even make them anymore. It had a 450 4-barrel carburetor on it, and drunk gas like a camel do water. That was my first car.
Okay. And I remember you said you one of the biggest memories you remember was graduating high school. Did you further your education in college or anything?
The only education I furthered was when I went to seminary school. I got a job. I ended up going to school for a lot that my job required for me to do. Matter of fact, I went to Mississippi State for a while because they required me on some burning certificates that I need, because I was also fighting with the national forest. When they used to have wildfires, I was in forestry, and I would have to go off to other states to help fight those fires that they had. And so that was an experience there. And then they sent us to school to teach us how to drive because we hauled flammable material for the company that I worked for. And so we was over in Alabama, went to university over there to make sure that we got all that. So we wouldn't blow nobody up or ourselves up while we was on the road. And there's other things that we did also. Went to D.C. and stayed there about 3 months, working once just to father some education that we needed also. And Honey may have some more that she want to add on to that.
I'm just enjoying listening to you. I love history. We should never forget where we came from because it's a teacher to us. We should always be willing to help each other. And like my husband, he made the comment, get to know a person's story before you judge them. because it's richness in people, but we have to take the time to get to know them. Yes.
Did you have any daily hobbies that you, or jobs that you did before you started working with the company that you work with? You worked there 34 years. Did you have anything you did before then?
I did. I worked for another place that was called Proudest Cooperation, where they built clocks. I did that for a while, but then, after I got the other job, I applied for it and decided not to stay there at that place. Didn't stay there about a year or something like that. And then the other thing, after I retired from my job, amazing, they hired me back as a consultant. So I ended up working back for the company, making a real living, because I didn't have to work by the salary that they was paying me for. Now I was a contractor, and I did that for the next 10 years, and that worked out really great. But in anything before, when I was 16, 17 years old, I went to the Mississippi Delta, and what they call harvest tanks. They put soybeans and things like that in these tanks. They mellow. I went and helped build those tanks, and that was something that I did with someone that was hiring us for the summer, a friend of mine. And that's all the work. All the rest of our work was around the house, because, as I said earlier, I had to stay home, help raise them children, being the oldest. Mm-hmm. Now, I can tell you just right here, being at the oldest person, you have a lot you have to do. Mm-hmm. You missed a lot of school. I missed a lot of days out of school. Matter of fact, I got my transcript from high school. I missed 193 days out of the 12 years of school. Now, school don't last but 180 days a year. Mm-hmm. So I missed over a year. Mm-hmm. But when I graduated way up in my class. Because when I went to school, I went to learn. And this here's kind of funny. I missed school once, 3 weeks in a row. And when I went back to school, I had on the shoes. They don't mind me telling you this. I had the tennis shoes on that come from a store that they called Fred Dollar Store at that time. And these tennis shoes, they cost like $2. My mother finally did enough domestic work to have $2 that I could get a pair of shoes to go back to school. And I was sitting there in the class that morning, and the teacher said, "Well, we're glad that Willie Goss is back," and said, how you been? Okay, where you been? And I said, "Sick." And then one of the students right behind me, he leaned up to my ear and he said, "You wasn't sick." He said, "You didn't have any shoes." He was looking at those brand new shoes I had on. And he was 100% right, but I was sick. But that was that ridicule from children, and then you being embarrassed. But yet, I was there, and I was glad to be there, And so those are things that went on in our lives, not only mine, but a lot of people have stories like that. But you still made it, and that's what you're glad of. Today, healthy. It's maybe not as healthy as I want to be, but I am healthy and eat well, and just thank God for that, and have family, and just everything is okay. Mm-hmm. And another note, I heard you mention earlier, and I think it's okay for me to mention this. It was the Winston County Self-Help. We was in the self-help for several years. We enjoyed it. It's a very good program. We know the president. We've been knowing him a long time. We just eventually got out of it. It was a choice that we are self-made. And I think that is a good program that they have. And I believe it's going to continue to grow, because it's been growing for lots of years. We had several cows. They came here before for one of the events that we had. Once we had about 50 heads of cows. The tornado came through in 2014, blew all our fences and everything down. And so we kind of got rid of all the animals at that particular time, and just never got the cows back. Kept the horses, but never got them back, and just earlier this year, we got rid of all our horses. And so we don't have any animal now except for Rhino. That's our Rottweiler dog out there. And that's the only animal that we have.
Yes.
But we are considered getting more cows. We got all our fences back up, and eventually we probably is going to put some back in there. And I think that would be pretty good. We got a grandson that can actually be able to help us for about the next 4 or 5 years, Ethan. And he said that he would be willing to help. So, and then the others come home, you know, we'll let them do it. Yeah.
I thought you were taking the opportunity of this being on video to volunteer Andre for that.
Oh, yeah, we volunteer him for a lot of different things. Yeah.
They work.
Yeah.
They have been taught to work. They have work ethic.
Do y'all have anything that you haven't said yet that you wanna make sure we talk about?
Anything else?
No.
No, but just that we just appreciate you all deciding to, you know, to interview us and to find out some things that had happened. We are grateful that you choose us, because we know you could have chosen anyone that you want to, and taking the time out to come down and just listen to some of these old stories that's like reading out of a book, but they are all true. And Brian, even you coming down from Hattiesburg, I heard you say that's where you live, and Jackson, we go that way a lot, and so we're familiar with both of those places, and we're just glad, and we know that you growing up in Mississippi, and you understand a lot of the things that we're talking about, even though now you live here close, you know, to Starfield, and you're still in Mississippi. Mississippi is truly the hospitality state.
Yes.
You know, it is almost nowhere you can go where people still wait, you know. But, you know, by being a hospitality state, there's a lot of issues that's still in Mississippi, but not only Mississippi, in all 50 states, in our whole world. We see that there's something all the time. But if we didn't have the technology that we have today, a lot of the stuff we would not know about.
That's true.
You turn that television on right now, the news is on, and there's going to be something on there that's going to get you depressed or stressed out. That's why we watch. Sometimes you don't want to hear it because of things that's going on. But in order for change to come, it's going to take people like Andre and like Brian to make the world know that we can change. You all are a lot younger, and we'll continue to go on like we're doing. Like in our congregation with Andre, you know what we do. We always encouraging people to make a difference, and that's why you're even right now here with Brian, because we chose you. When they asked, we knew who to send, and so that's why we sent you, because we know that you're gonna make a difference. And we know that others who will be coming the years after you, we have some of those there, Brian, that's going to also be some people that you all going to be able to use. But in the end, I just thank you all.
I just thank God for the program, because what I said before, this is needed. History is needed so that we don't repeat, you know, the things that we don't need to repeat. And like Andre, the next generation is that's coming along, they need to know the struggles and the sacrifices that was made for them so that they can have what they have today. If you never know the struggles, you know, you really can't move forward. You have to know your history in order to be able to move forward, to understand who you are, your legacy. You need to know it. And this right here is actually like a legacy. It's showing people different aspects of people's lives, how they grew up, how they think, and how they overcame. So I'm enjoying it, and like my husband was saying, I thank God for this, because it truly is a blessing. It will be a blessing to a lot of people.
Well, I'm so grateful to y'all, and so grateful for Andre's participation in the program. And you know, I know that you've raised, you know, children and grandchildren that are engaged and active and interested, and like clearly like really, both inquisitive and hardworking and really brilliant. So I'm grateful to have the chance to talk to y'all, and I'm so thankful that you're sharing your stories as well. So
Let me say this. I thank God. Need to put God in there, because you grew up in Mississippi, you just about know and believe that there is a God.
Oh, yes.
We know today there's a lot of people that do not believe in a God, but we trust in God. We have faith. We believe what those 66 books from the Bible says about our Lord and Savior. And so whatever you do, I encourage you to keep God in your life. I know a lot of people do not believe in God. You have so many different religions out there now that people just say that there ain't no God. But one day, they will find out that there is a God. They will find out. And so we always going to promote God, no matter what you do. And I tell Andre and the congregation, always don't let anyone deter you from the belief that you have. Your parents, they're not going to lead you wrong, regardless of what evolution say. Remember, it's only a theory, and a theory is something that you just go over and over and over again. But God, He created, and so if the evolutionists say, "Hey, the man come from evolution," I believe they say that there was nothing there, and then there was an explosion. Okay, nothing there, and then an explosion. Something wrong. But what I'm saying is that there is a God. And just, if you don't believe that, then just seek out for Him. And then you will find out that He can take care of you. He can bring you from places where you never thought that you could go, and where you wouldn't believe that you were.
That's right.
Yeah, there's a lot there.